Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you. Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 55. It's time to get down with springtime, spooky style, as we take a stroll down the horrorverse with a deep dive into Hyde Street number 4. I'm Nick, and I am rejoined this evening by guest co-host Rob from Comic Book Chronicles. Welcome back, Rob. How goes it? You have been trekking across state lines of late, sir. Tell us all about your travails.
I mean, strictly speaking, Nick, I could go across state lines about every 15 minutes if I wanted to, because I live right next to the border of Wisconsin and Illinois. But I will take your statement in the spirit in which it was given. Yes, I went to C2E2 this past Saturday. C2E2, the Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo in Chicago at McCormick Place. You know, I go pretty much every year. I always have a blast, even though I don't know if you're a big convention goer, Nick, but I mean sometimes these things can be just draining and overstimulating, and I definitely felt 40 after this one. But yeah, I mean I wouldn't have traded it. I got to talk to a lot of cool creators. I got to meet some Power Rangers, which is always fun for me. So yeah, I wouldn't have traded it. I would like to give a couple of shout outs to some people that I saw at C2E2, if you don't mind.
Do it up.
The first person I want to say hi to is, now I don't know if this is her real name, but she goes under the handle Carly Pearl Cosplay on Instagram. That's CarlyPearl Cosplay. If you look at my Instagram, folks, at Comic Book Chronicles Rob, she's dressed as Rogue from the X-Men, and she was nice enough to help me record like a little 30-second joke video for one of my coworkers. So could not have been nicer, could not have been more gracious. And she was there with Costumers with a Cause, which is a charitable organization of cosplayers that operates in the Midwest, and I believe Tennessee and Florida as well. So check them out, definitely. And, you know, Carly, if you're looking for cosplay ideas, may I suggest Ash Arden, possibly? I mean, I haven't seen an Ash Arden yet. But yeah, Carly Pearl Cosplay on Instagram. And then I also got the chance to spend some time with someone that you know, Nick, Mr. Sean Von Gorman.
Oh my goodness. The man himself, the maniac himself. Tell us about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Well, of course, as this is of course episode 55 of the Ghost Machine Fans podcast. He was a guest on episode 54. Yeah, you know, I saw him there, and you know, I couldn't resist walking up to him and asking if he would mind shooting a little something for Instagram for my friends over at the Ghost Machine Fans podcast. And with about 5 seconds notice, he was in. He did his little hair flip and struck his Sean Von Gorman pose, and he was all about it. So really, I nothing but time, love, and attention for Sean Von Gorman after C2E2, and I plan to talk about his creator-owned series, The Pedestrian, in the near future over on my channel.
Oh, nice. Very cool. That'll be a fun one for you to do reviews of. For
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely.
That's
And you know,
exciting.
he was nice enough to do like a personalized sketch cover for me on issue 1 of The Pedestrian. He kind of Geigerized it, and if you want, Nick, I can shoot that over to you so the Ghost Machine fans can see it.
That would be really cool. You should send a picture. We'll post to that. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And thanks again for making that great and also funny video, because it was like you were like, hey, by the way, there's this episode of this podcast about this guy, and then he's right here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was hilarious. So
It was too perfect not to do.
one other shout out I actually have, and this is also for someone at C2E2. I don't know if you know Jason Hershowitz. He's in the Facebook group, and he's on Instagram at Millhouses. That's Milhouses on Instagram. and he's been a guest co-host on the show before. He came to talk to us about his experience as a guest during one of the early Ghost Machine VIP dinners that was held at, I believe, MegaCon and some of the stuff like that. He also did a Northerner character deep dive episode, which was super fun. And so he was at the C2E2 and he went to Gene Ha, superstar
Mm-hmm.
artist Gene Ha, who's going to be on First Ghost. And he, Jason's a keen fella, right? So he asked Gene to draw a sketch cover on Ghost Machine #1 of Linus Nash, who has yet to appear, but is mentioned as a significant character in multiple instances, including in Sarah Nash's biography. And we know Sarah Nash to be the protagonist of the upcoming First Ghost series by Brad Meltzer and Gene Haas. So what Jason has done is Jason has essentially conjured up the first appearance of a character
Wow.
vis-a-vis. You know what I'm saying? That's fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you know,
So
now, Nick, I don't think I've ever told you this. I don't think I'd have reason to tell you this, but Gene Ha was at an event that Anderson's Bookshop held in the Chicagoland area several years ago. And what Gene does, or what he has done at these events sometimes, is he will sit there with his sketchbook and he'll do sketches of just attendees and he'll just hand them to them. Say, hey, here, I drew you. And he was nice enough to, we got a chance to talk to him a little bit. My wife and I did. And he was nice enough to draw me. And the Lego Batman movie was coming out at the time. So what I have in my possession somewhere is a sketch of me with a Lego Batman mask over my head. This is true. Gene Ha drew me, and it was a great thrill. He's always at C2E2. He's always very gracious. So shout out to Gene Ha. How about that?
Oh, that's super cool. I
Mm-hmm.
remember first encountering his art on The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix when I was much younger. And even
Mm,
then, it was like, woo, this guy's on another level. So excited to see all that in First Ghost soon, later
absolutely,
this year.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait, but I'm in the way. We're talking about this convention scene and all this madness, but it's time for the news. So I gotta get out of here. Snuggles out again. Becky, she couldn't make it. Everyone, she apologizes. It's actually Bruce. His spring break is going down right now, and they're on a zoo marathon. We did an Ohio zoo today that I was able to join them at. Tomorrow they're doing an Indiana zoo. So she wasn't able to be here tonight. Robert, that means you're back at the news desk. I'm out of here.
All right, folks, today is Wednesday, April the 16th, which happens to be the release date of the second printing of Hyde Street #3 and the second printing of Hyde Street #4. We've also got the release of the highly anticipated Red Coat #11 featuring the Northerner. And there are also some new designs over on the Threadless store that you definitely want to check out. We encourage you to take a look at those.
Yeah, so the Northerner, this is the one that like we've seen these covers where Civil War era and it's Simon Pure with his arm around the Northerner and he's got like a bottle of something and it's a battle and like and we've seen the preview a little bit too that was on the Image website. So yeah, this is one of those issues where we've had all these red coat issues that we've really enjoyed that are kind of the side quests leading up back to this main quest line, right? And that's what this deal is. So the Northern and Hyde Street on fire, man, with all these multiple printings. That's good stuff right there. Yeah.
Never a bad sign right there.
So do you remember the Jerry Ordway cover recently on a Geiger book? It was like the Superman
Yeah,
homage one.
it was the homage to Action Comics #1, I believe.
Right. Yes. So to celebrate Superman Day, Ghost Machine Pro slapped that bad boy on the threadless. So you can get that on a
Nice.
t-shirt, which is pretty cool. And There's also a new Hyde Street one that's like the cinema of slaughter thing, and it's like kind of like old school movie-ish kind of like stuff. Like dun, dun, dun. But it's like the scene where you've got Mr. X-Ray with some popcorn, and then like the audience is all dead, and it's got the logo. So some new stuff. And there's also a really neat one that is a screen printing, old school screen printing type of deal for Geiger that looks like a skull, and it's called like Wasteland Guardian. And that's actually something
Wow.
Gary, I think Gary Frank designed that, is what I may have heard it from a little bird. So that's pretty cool. So check out that stuff on the thread list, man. You got to strategically watch the sales, and you can get some really good deals on there. So check it out.
Yeah, man, I'm looking at their offerings right now. It looks like some really great stuff. This is a priority for me now. I've got to work this into my budget.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. It's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of designs on there. So the world is your oyster, my friend. Speaking of which, if we're going to talk about Hyde Street number 4, before we do that in detail, we need to run down what the cover options are if you're going to go out and pick this book up at your local comic book shop. Although it sounds like, based on it being April 16th, that the only option you might have for this particular issue is the second printing, which is pretty cool. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So did you see the main cover on this one? The banging Yvonne Rice, Danny Mickey, Brad Anderson joint. You see that one?
Absolutely. It looks like he's at a wax museum. It looks like, and he appears to be coming out of a box. It's an interesting look. This was the cover that I picked up, and definitely an interesting first impression for our matinee monster of Hyde Street.
Yeah. So at first I was like, wait, is he why is he in a coffin? Was he buried
Yeah,
alive? But then it's not that. It looks like because he's got like shavings or sawdust shavings type stuff, like packing material.
yeah,
And
packing material.
yeah, and then it's like you're right. It says Wax Museum is one of the stickers, and then there's a larger label that says Hyde Street Amusements Warning intended for novelty only, or blah blah blah. So
Hmm.
it was like being shipped or whatever. And I mean, there's a lot of artistic license, right? I don't
Naturally.
care. Ivan could draw whatever he heck wants, and I'll look at it. I'll buy it. You can have my money, and I'll just give it to him.
There you go.
Um, but it is really neat, and it definitely conveys that hey, this issue is going to be about this character more than likely for sure.
Hmm. Absolutely. The
Yeah,
skulls are a nice touch too, down at the bottom there.
I was trying to understand if that was like they were part of the packing material or whatever, or
Yeah,
because they're kind of coming out of the box as well. But I guess, but
just throw some skulls in there. What the heck? Why not?
yeah, didn't you say on one of the previous episodes you were like death and skulls all play well, it's fine.
Yeah, the skulls always work, man. So it's something about it.
The B cover, did you notice, has the artist from Hornsby and Halo on that?
I most certainly did. Peter, and I'm so sorry if I butcher his name. Snejbjerg? Is that how you do
No,
it? Is that how you pronounce it?
Google told me something totally different than what Peter Tomasi told me. And Peter Tomasi told me Snyberg, just Snyberg. So I
Sniper.
say Snyberg. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, we've got Pranky, the evil Boy Scout, standing in front of. He's standing in front of a bunch of fire. He's standing on skeletal remains. He's got like a stick with a skull on it, and he's got a belt with weapons on it. And the best thing about this cover, for me at least, Yvonne Reese is really good at this, and it looks like Peter Snyberg is too. They're really good at making Pranky's eyes look insane and sadistic. And he's got this big giant Joker grin in this image. I didn't get this cover because it wasn't at my local comic shop, but I think if I'd had the opportunity, this might have been the one I'd have picked up.
it's pretty intense. I, I'm involved with Cub Scouts pretty heavily for my child.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's an evil Cub Scout, man. That is an evil Cub Scout. for
You
sure.
can most certainly say that.
I really like it. I like all the little details that he's got in there. And yeah, I bet he would draw a pretty darn good Joker with that grin that's on that guy.
He almost looks. I mean, with the hair, he almost looks Jokerish as it is. But yeah, it's one of the more memorable pranky images that I've seen in the short life of Hyde Street thus far.
For sure. And speaking of which, we actually have seen the Matinee Monster in like, I don't know, probably at least 5 to 10 other images. Even his bio page said his first appearance was Ghost Machine #1. And so,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of individual profile images, just like the A cover, the C cover by Joe Prado, who we've heard a whole different bunch of people talk about recently. Actually, Sean Von Gorman recently talked about how when he went back to the Kubert School to study with Joe, he learned a lot of new things. So this, Mr. Prado, there's he knows people. He's the guy, and I kind of dig his Matinee Monster, I guess, profile type of picture drawing,
Mm-hmm.
you could say.
There's a lot of intensity to it. I mean, it's an up close shot. You can't see, well, for obvious reasons that we'll get into later. You can't see his eyes,
Hmm.
and he's got this snarl going on. I like the texture and the color of the skin. Yeah, really, really masterfully done. A really spooky up close shot.
A lot of detail. Very cool. And I believe that one was with colors by West Zioba. And just
Mm-hmm.
a quick shout out to West because I've noticed him on a couple other Ghost Machine variants of late. And like we mentioned in the news, Ghost Machine fans, the second printing of this issue also happens to come out today, according to Lunar's website. And that one is by Francis Portela, who I dig. I like how what they did is he's basically has like the coat for the Matinee Monster blends into the background, and so all you can see is kind of his skin, his hands that sticks out with this really neat contrast. Very creepy, very creepy. What'd you think?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a sucker for images where the monster reaches out toward the quote unquote camera, reaches out towards the reader. They do that to great effect here. Again, the coloring is really strong. The stitching down the torso is a really neat, sort of mixing the red in with the yellowish green. And yeah, again, the black blending into the background is a great effect.
So, are you a It's not a loaded question. So, like, let's say for your your most favorite series, regardless of what it is, are you a person who picks up the second print as a collector, or do you just pick up the second print if you couldn't get a hold of the first print and you want to read that?
Generally I am a buy the second print if you couldn't get the first print guy. But if I have a special fondness for an issue, I've been known to pick up a second print of it just because I want to support it. I don't do that often, but it has been done. What
Fair
about
enough.
you, Nick?
I am like a completionist with things like If I pull it, I'm a completionist on it. So I try to get all of the
Okay.
stuff. So I pull all the Ghost Machine stuff, obviously, and like I pull all the Sponge Universe stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't try to like get all the ratio variants unless it's a
Hmm.
series I really like. Like I get all the ratio variants for Redcoat and I get all the ratio variants for Rook, but it's not necessarily everything. But all the basic covers I usually get for Ghost Machine stuff and Spawn stuff and some of the stuff that I intermittently read. But those are the only two that I would get like all the covers for. But what's
Hmm.
interesting about second printings is I remember when a second printing truly happened because the first one it wasn't the same as it was right now, right? Like
Hmm.
they didn't have a pre-order mechanism the way that they do now. And so they
Right.
just printed as many as they could. And so if something went to a second printing in that environment, it meant that that first one was really sought after. And the second one was like, ah, crap, I had to get a second one, you know? Whereas nowadays, a lot of people look at it more like, well, there's not as many going to be printed of the second printing because the store only ordered 50. And that
Mm-hmm.
means for the second printing, only so many people are going to order that. Man, like, no, not they're not going to match it. So it is for many perceived, and rightly so, as quote unquote rarer, harder to find, just based on a lower quantity of them existing. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as I'm concerned, as long as they keep making the covers all sweet, I'll just keep giving them my like what $4 or whatever for the. It's fine. Like I'll keep buying them
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you really can't go wrong with this second printing cover. It's
for sure. He's a cool artist. He is.
absolutely.
All right. So we need to take a second and provide you with your official spoiler pause for Hyde Street #4. All right, we made it. We're safe. Can you give us a creator roll call on this Ghost Machine comic, Rob? Let us know who put this together.
I would love to. Our storytellers for this one are the GM of GM, the general manager of Ghost Machine himself, Jeff Johns. And then we've got Yvonne Reese as our artist. Our inker is Danny Mickey. Our colorist is Brad Anderson. Our letterer is Rob Lee. And then our editor is Brian Cunningham.
The usual suspects. So we still have Yvonne on this one.
So where did we leave off at the end of issue 3?
We had the last issue was the one that took place around the holidays for the
Yes.
purpose of like the event that the bad guy had to go through, but really it was an issue and that came out in January. And
Mm-hmm.
then so at the end of that issue, the bad guy that X-Ray and Pranky have been tormenting and Pranky is leading to damning to add him as another score. He's about to send this bad guy away, and out of the sky, literally out of the sky, comes Super Frankenstein. And Super Frankenstein is who we have discovered is called the Matinee Monster, but like literally smashes through Pranky's magical Santa Claus esque sleigh and all that stuff and lands. And as far as we can tell, saves the guy that was doing all the bad stuff. And he
Mm-hmm.
has like a little magical orb and it like saves him. And Pranky's like, I can't believe you did that. Like he was bad. Like why would you do that? Like I had him. He was mean. He was mine and all this stuff. And then he jumps away and Frankie's like nobody likes you. All
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. And so then at the end of that issue, we get a little brief, one of those cool little like, and next, the Matinee Monster, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's where now in this issue we begin where we're back in 1949 in like a Hollywood style, L.A. What's that movie? L.A. Confidential, like type of Hollywood
Something like that, yeah.
going on type of deal. So what did you think about the vibe going into this? It's like the monster movie era, the heyday of monster movies, 4 years after World War II ended, right?
So we open the issue with the cover page of a script here. The title of the screenplay is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein's Brother. And it's funny what you notice about issues the second or third time you read them, because I had no memory of what the title of the screenplay was, and I think that's a hilarious title for a screenplay because we've heard about the Bride of Frankenstein or the Son of Dracula. They give these titles a sense of grandeur or menace to them, whereas this one it's Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein's brother. It's like there's no grandeur to that. They're not even trying. Oh, it's Frankenstein's brother. All right, okay, fine, whatever. But yeah, that was I literally laughed out loud when I saw that. But yeah, going into the next page, the 2-page spread, what I noticed immediately about this is that those are legit movie posters in the background of this image behind Oscar Oddman. I know that's a legit Dracula poster. That's Bela Lugosi. And then you've got the Invisible Man. I don't immediately recognize what the one on the far left is. Nick, do you?
The one on the far left is Phantom of the Opera with
That's what it is. That's what it
Lon
is.
Chaney. It says
Yes.
Lon Chaney. Those, to your point, those are all real, and you can kind of see they're like scanned in or like it. And I like how that feels. Like they want you to feel that authenticity. I think it makes it feel alive. I bet the ones in the bottom corner, you see how there are those two. They're just peeking.
Yeah,
I bet those are real, and we just don't know them. But I bet they're like real posters that existed.
absolutely. Yeah. Nick, when did you see the Universal Monster movies? Are you a Universal Monster movie guy?
I mean, I like all that stuff a lot, but I couldn't tell you. I knew all these names, and if I saw them on a list, I knew they were all horror actors, but I couldn't tell you like which one played who.
See, now, you know when I started watching them for the first time?
What, when you were a kid?
No, like 2 years ago. I was a scared ass little kid. I was scared of Vigo the Carpathian in Ghostbusters 2. So, like watching Dracula or Frankenstein movies, what even from the 1940s would have spooked the heck out of me. But just recently, a friend kind of got me into Creature from the Black Lagoon, and that sort of segued into Frankenstein and Dracula. And I'm kind of working my way through the Universal Monster movie catalog every October. So that's how I recognized that Dracula image because it was fresh in my mind. Yeah, it adds a great sense of authenticity, and I don't know if realism is the word I would be looking for, but yeah, I mean they're creating a vibe with those posters in the background.
It is. It does add a layer of realism, because when you get to the Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein poster that's on the wall. That's a real movie. That's a real
Oh yeah,
movie poster. And this is a real quote unquote sequel that was supposedly going to get made. And that's a little bit of the irony. It's like, oh, yeah, by the way, like this would have been the sequel to that movie that was a real movie. Or,
the line exchange that I really loved on this page is we've got Oscar Oddman, telling the agent guy, "Well, didn't the monster burn to the crisp in the last picture?" And the agent tells him what the premise for this new movie's going to be, and Oscar says, "Frankenstein's got a brother? Since when?" And the agent says, "Since they decided to sell more tickets, that's when." And I love that exchange because I think it encapsulates the business side of the movie industry and really the entertainment industry overall so well. Like it made me think whenever stuff like this comes up, I always think of Star Wars just because I'm a Star Wars geek. And
mm-hmm.
it made me think specifically of Revenge of the Sith, which actually celebrates its 20-year anniversary this year. Back in 2005, George Lucas swore up and down as part of the buzz for that movie that it was going to be the last Star Wars movie. The circle is now complete. That there was no more story to tell. There was no episode 7 after Return of the Jedi, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, years later, we found out that George Lucas was working on his version of Episode 7 and had gotten far enough along in the process that he had talked to Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher about it. And then, of course, he wound up selling Star Wars to Disney, and they wound up doing their own thing. But my point is that as much as we love art and entertainment and movies and all this kind of stuff, from a creative, artistic perspective, to an extent, it is all about the money and the money it generates, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. I mean, art is made to a large extent to be sold. It always has been. But yeah, that exchange over Frankenstein's brother really it made me think of Revenge of the Sith and kind of brought to mind that aspect of creative endeavors in art.
Yeah, originally Solo was going to perish in the carbonite, but they brought him back because they wanted to sell more toys.
There you go.
They had good margins on those toys back in the day, in the
Yeah.
80s. Whoo, forget about it. All right.
Harrison Ford has said that George didn't see any money in dead Han toys.
he does tell him the role, but ultimately he's like the bottom line is he's says this is the only job you can get. So either you take this job, and I like how he lists a bunch of names that we recognize, like Boris Karloff and these other people. Because and
Hmm.
then there's all these reasons where it's like, no, that person said no, or that person's already doing this, and it's like the whole point is this emphasis that if you want to be a part of this world, you have to give up a piece of yourself, or you have to give up, a piece of your hopes and dreams, and mold to what others want. And in a lot of ways, people would say that that's part of how a lot of actors got their start or whatever.
Hmm.
And in a sense, he kind of approaches it that way at first with a little bit of a pep talk when he goes and he starts to get into the makeup for the monster, right?
Hmm.
Some good
Yeah, I
vibes.
love this. I love this sequence, the whole putting on makeup sequence. We see literally him from the start, and then as we go through these pages, we see the layers being added, and the director's, talking him up and talking him into, giving life to the monster, basically. And see, this is when movie effects were actually special. You know what I mean? Like this is practical 1940s special effects. If this were done now, it would be like a CGI suckfest, but this is practical magic, ladies and gentlemen.
And it's 12 panels on 2 pages that are all the same size. Of the process of putting all this like layers of makeup and skins, green stuff, and it's all the Frankenstein makeup, right? And
Yeah.
the emphasis it's hard, it takes a really long time, but out of nowhere, the director's like, yeah, I even saw you at this particular, like, in a private performance. I think you're great, you're gonna be great, they're gonna see it in your
Mm-hmm.
eyes, all this kind of stuff. Like he actually like gives him genuine support. I was expecting the other shoe to drop, him to be like some dude's agent that was just trying to get him on the stage because, like,
Yeah.
and lie to him, but that was legit. So that person did believe in him and his whole thing, and for all intents and purposes, it still didn't work out, which is like a bummer. Bummer.
The irony here is that Oscar is almost giving up a piece of his soul. And like I said, that's ironic given what we see later. But he's if you give your creativity, because creativity is such a deeply ingrained thing. It's something that people in a perfect world are very passionate about, and people see themselves doing certain things. And then when you have someone else telling you, "No, this is what you're gonna do. This is what you're good at," and you go that route, you are kind of giving up a piece of yourself, and that's what Oscar is being asked to do here. And ultimately, he does it, and we see where that leads him.
It's challenging to see that there's that potential there, and it's like he just can't tap into that for whatever reason. But it also sounds like the circumstances are just against him as well, right? Because the director's wife gets sick and the studio delayed stuff. So here's what I wanted to ask you. What is your thought about his name is Oscar Oddman,
Yes.
Oddman. What do you think of the verbiage there of him being the last name Oddman? Oddman.
The name Oddman or Oddman, however you pronounce it, sort of points to him being the odd man out, the person who doesn't belong in this whole process. And of course, he does. He wants to be in this fraternity, this community, this business. And yet he is, for the moment, the odd man out, and that's why he's doing all of this stuff and kind of selling his soul.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of John Zian stuff, like in JSA years and Green Lantern years, and like Earth One and Doomsday Clock. A lot of characters have a thing like that, and
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's kind of like saying, "Hey, I'm reading the comic. You're writing the comic. High five. Let's do it. Like
Yeah, there you go.
like I'll take it. But because part of the beauty of that is you're gonna juxtapose something on the nose like that, like this odd, like Mr. Oddman, with the situation, and it'll work. And I really think it works. And I mean, it's certainly worked because a literally world-class talented artist is doing the work. Just
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is a contrast because you do have this comic booky name, but a very human, relatable quandary that this man faces. Yeah, it's like I said, very Johnsian. I hadn't thought of it in that dimension, but yeah, it is very Jeff Johns in that sense.
and I really like Rob Lee's big monster noise. And what's the pivotal panel, because we have that little exposition there, that the very short version is there was a delay, so they had to do some rush shooting, and because he was insecure, he made a mountain out of a molehill, thought something
Mm-hmm.
was going on, but he's still not kicked out of the picture, right? Like he's still in the picture, and literally like in the movie, because back in the day they would have counted a picture, you see. He's worried. He's like paranoid essentially, and he's going to go talk to his agent about it. And there's another gigantic dude that is coincidentally there, and it's like, oh man, like isn't it supposed to be hard to get work if you're really tall and big and all that? But they're saying this guy's really great because he was on Broadway, and so he's freaking out and he's stressing out and all this stuff. It's just it's like Odysseus or something. Like there's just like circumstances. It's like, oh man, why? No, like this could have worked out. Like it's all in your head. Get it out of your head. Get out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
man.
He's freaking out. He's make like you said, making a mountain out of a molehill. You feel for this guy because I mean, you can see in theory the wheels turning in his head, and you can see how he would be paranoid about that kind of thing. So it makes sense. It's very relatable.
Oh, I have been that guy. I've been that
Mm.
guy at jobs. I've been that guy, in life. I'm just saying, I feel for Mr. Oddman. I do.
Hmm.
But it makes you wonder. It's like, wasn't the director probably like that one that gave him that support initially? Wasn't he probably continuing to do that, and he probably didn't hear it? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just.
all the tools were in place for him to succeed.
And so the other guy, Mitchell guy, he comes around while Oscar is rehearsing his lines, just like
Hmm.
he wants to chat with him. And then Oscar won't even let him talk. And he like throws him against some lights and stuff. And we start to get these noises from Rob that indicate there's a struggle upon a stage and things are cracking and clinking and clacking. And then it's interesting how he says that this Mitchell guy, he was super tough. He survived polio at the age of 7, a horse's kick at age 12, and a near fatal crash at age 26, only to fall victim to a Mole Richardson Sr. solar spot at the age of 31, which is a giant spotlight on a theater stage.
Right.
And it's like somehow the fact that he lived through all that made it that much worse to see that horribly bloody panel that Yvonne drew with that
Hmm.
spotlight crushing this dude to death, which is really amazing.
Not only that, but on the previous page, you've got the quote unquote camera close up on his face, and I am the monster. He's emphasizing to Mitchell, this is my role. I am the monster. And then, of course, moments later, to an extent, he actually becomes a monster. So he gets what he wants. And yeah, I love the impact. Well, love, I guess, being a relative term in this case, but I love the impact of the light crushing the Mitchell character. You can feel it off the page, and then below you've got the shot of Oscar with the smoke coming up. Well, maybe that's not. Maybe that's dust more than smoke. Forgive me. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very impactful stuff. No pun intended.
Yeah, and then the blood on his face, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they say that he flees and he literally wakes up on Hyde Street. They jump ahead a bit because we do learn that, like, initially there's a contract signed and some stuff. But we jump ahead a bit, and here's a pretty big thing for me. I want to briefly ask about it. I don't want to detour us entirely, but
Okay.
they say that he wakes up on Hyde Street, and so we know he's there. He's a resident. He's going to do the thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the first person that he's supposed to get the soul of to like get some points for the scorekeeper is this little girl, 10-year-old girl. Says her name is not important. She wasn't the first child to be drawn to Hyde Street, nor the last. She may have killed her pet cat or maybe stole penny candy. Sometimes it doesn't take much, but she wasn't
Mm-hmm.
frightened of Mr. Oddman. So, brief pause. Here's the thing. We've been talking 4 issues in now. Issue 5 is also out on the stands and readable. And a lot of people are like, what's the exact threshold that gets me on Hyde Street? Because we've had people do all various different things that seem to like trigger it that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And this is literally like we're saying right here, straight up, you can steal candy that only costs a penny and you can possibly end up on Hyde Street. So here's my thought. I don't know if you're a gamer or if you've ever been a dungeon master or anything of that nature, but here's my thought. So I figured that in this world or whatever, that you roll a percentile die, and the percentile die is gets rolled when you do a bad thing. And if the bad thing, the more egregious the thing, the more likely it is that you'll go to Hyde Street, but it's not like 100%. But also, like, let's say it's a little thing like stealing a pair of socks or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And but you roll a really bad, like you have a really bad roll, you can still end up on Hyde Street. So I think that's the only thing I can imagine, that there's like just a misfortune element as well, which all jokes aside and D&D analogies aside, it makes sense because this guy literally calls himself the scorekeeper, and it's just such an interesting dynamic, man.
I think that makes, and I'm not a D&D guy, but that the whole percentage aspect and the luck of the dice makes sense, because you would think that if you can get to Hyde Street by stealing candy, there are lots of people who do much more egregious things in the world who would be there much more readily. You know what I mean? So the whole ratio and the game of chance aspect makes sense to me. I think that's really insightful. Again, the Universal monster movies are fresh in my head, at least some of them. So it made me think of the famous scene from the original Frankenstein movie with Boris Karloff and the little girl. There's a scene where like they're by the pond, by a pond, and the idea is this monster gonna maul this innocent, sweet little girl. That was kind of the vibe that I got from this page. I don't know if that's what they were going for.
I wonder if it is an allusion to that you're talking about. And there's
Mm-hmm.
one other small detail as this is happening, as he's just entering Hyde Street, that they throw out there. The narrator says they say Hyde Street was rougher back then,
Mm-hmm.
unforgiving, populated with residents from a more vicious generation, beings who have since completed their service or vanished. No one really knows. So this is 1949. My assumption is that they're saying that there's a whole lot of bad people from like the war that were in there.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can imagine. I mean,
I was thinking it was them saying there were like a lot of Nazis that probably,
oh, you're
you know
going
what
the
I'm
Nazi
saying?
route.
Well, because they're saying like this, it was rougher back then, like, and then it says generation, like the word
Yeah,
gen. And so I was like, well, either what are they? Either they're talking about like the Dust Bowl, or they're talking about like evil. Like that's like who is evil within this? You know what I'm saying? Like
hmm
there's some rough people in that. Like isn't everybody like how did you get there and not be like is everybody like what is it otherwise? Like I don't know. So his first victim is this little girl and he can't do it, and the whole thing is she's like, I can tell you're not a bad guy because I can see it in your eyes. That's when we are illuminated into that he's zapped into the scorekeeper's lair or whatever, and we know that this is a different earlier era than the people we've seen now on the list of participants or whatever, like on the delivery scoreboard, because this
Mm-hmm.
is more back in the day than the other issues have been.
Right.
And
It's further back in time.
yeah, and it appears that for whatever reason, there's been a contract agreed upon. It's supposedly like in a magical sense between the scorekeeper guy who really looks like I think he really looks like a dealer at like a casino because he's got the
He
deal like
does.
that's
Yeah,
the
he's got
hat.
that look to him.
He's really mad because he's like, you won't do what I say, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. And like, okay, that's fine and all, but like the dynamics here, it's just so weird. I want to know what type of entity the scorekeeper guy is. Don't you want to know that?
Yeah, I mean, I there was part of me that wondered, like, is he Satan? Like, is he Satan? And I doubt they would put. Well, maybe they would, but but yeah, I wondered, like, is this the devil himself, or is this a satanic underling? But yeah, the nature of how this book works, and how the scorekeeper works, and how just the whole system and the game works is interesting because we don't know all the rules. We know there are a lot of players and kind of what the game is, but one of the things I like about Hyde Street is that it feels like they're peeling back the curtain slowly but surely, not just in terms of how the world works, but how vastly the world is populated, because the cast has continued to expand pretty vastly in a relatively short period of time. You know, we started with Mr. X-Ray, and then we got Pranky, and then we got the Matinee Monster, and then we got Miss Goodbody, and then there are various allusions to all these other characters. So there's a sense that we have a much larger tapestry here that we're just starting to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's a handful on this older board that are seen in the more recent board. I think
Mm-hmm.
Zirkus Clown is seen there, and the Butcher of Hyde Street obviously is because that's a little nugget we get at the end of this issue here in a few pages. And there is a transactional element to what the score creeper tries to do that is similar to like selling your soul to a demon or whatever, because
Yeah,
what
we see
he's
the contract.
well, and he's trying to dangle it at him like, if you do this, then you'll be a superstar. Like you're gonna get all these things that you wanted.
Yeah.
And so there's this promise of that, and that must mean that there's a whole lot of very bad people that have done a lot of very bad things to be able to go back and have their dreams fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you wonder, like, what's the cyclical nature of that behavior back to this fella? But in his defense, Oscar is a good guy. He's a good guy to the nth degree, and he's like, no, I'm still not gonna do it. And man, oh man, like this guy, this was some amazing art. Like, oh, and like we got a shout out to Danny Mickey.
Yes, absolutely.
Like takes inks to another level. Like it's one of those things where there's a plenty of artists that do amazing ink work, but you can tell when somebody is just a master of their craft, and that's what Danny Mickey is on these inks, man. You can really see
Absolutely. And I
it.
mean, it helps that the scene is largely in black and white so that you
Mm-hmm.
can emphasize those inks. And then, of course, by virtue of such things, it makes the colors pop that much more. But yeah, because it's in black and white, the inks stand out that much more. But yeah, he stands his ground, and then the scorekeeper whacks him in the face. Is that a hammer that he hits him with?
Yeah, it looks like a small sledge of
Yeah, I was gonna say
sorts.
it looks like he smacks him in the face with a sledgehammer, And then, okay, here we go. Now, I'm queasy about eye stuff.
Oh,
Okay.
really? Oh, you're doomed.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like, I'm not queasy about a lot of things, but yeah, the whole eye thing, and it established we established earlier that Oscar has kind eyes. The little girl says, "You're not a monster. I see it in your eyes." And then, of course, now we have the scorekeeper. He's hammering, I believe those are indeed nails, into the eye sockets of Oscar Oddman. And it's a gory sequence, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not kid ourselves.
I really like how they had several panels where they emphasized his eyes leading up to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's one where he just says the word wait right before he's gonna get hit, and his
Yeah.
eyes are just drawn in this way. And then even earlier in the book, a couple of times, the way he looks with his eyes, it's just like always his eyes, and it's drawn to remind you this person has so much that's related to their eyes, and that so much of their power and the strength and their character comes from their eyes. And so that's why when this horrible thing happens, regardless of whether or not you hate eye stuff, which yeah, it's super gross for sure, it's like, well, it's that much more damning because it's like the thing that they need. It's like, hey man, remember, in your eyes the audience can see that. Like that's the whole deal. Like if you keep that in mind, like that's your confidence. It's going to keep you out of your head. And the scorekeeper robs him of that, not because he wants to rob him of any kind of confidence, but because he wants to make it so other people who he's going to damn can't see that
Mm-hmm.
quality.
Yeah.
And I was, I guess it makes sense that he rips the dude's tongue out. Can you imagine? Like Rob Lee was sitting around. He was like, "Man, I gotta write down the noise when you
Oh,
rip out a tongue," and he
yeah.
was Nyaarr.
Hmm.
That's just it,
Oh god.
and that's the noise that you make when your tongue gets ripped out. I guess
What do
is what
you
happens.
what kind of, like, do you watch movies to get a sense of what that sound is? Do you how do you come up with those specific letters?
They look really cool. That's all that
Yeah, no,
matters.
I mean, I can't deny that, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this page again as we speak, and then, like, in the top middle, like, he's got these two nails literally sticking out of his eye socket. Oh my god! You know, the scene is more gory than I remembered it being from earlier today. Actually, now that I'm really taking the time to stare at it, but yeah, it's one of the more violent scenes that the book has given us, and it's a reminder of how far Hyde Street will push things sometimes.
Yeah, I think they want that. I think they want to have that reaction.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
yeah.
you can't get mad. I maintain this. You can't get mad at a horror book for showing you something horrible. I mean, you have the reaction that you have, but you got to understand, like, that's what they're going for. It's just like, man, they went for it.
And to be super crass, after the fact, he does look cooler. I'm just saying, he looks way more metal. You know what I mean? Like because it takes you back to the scene where we were talking about from the previous issue, like the Christmas, the snow, and he's right there in the snow with them, and he jumps away, literally does like a Hulk jump, and that's when
Hmm.
Frankie's like throwing a fit, like nobody likes you. I just love the way that this ended. I think it's a really neat way to make you want more with this character and other ones too. But he goes back to this amazing, cool castle that's just reminiscent of like a monster movie castle, right? Like this makes me think of Universal Monster Movie Castle, which I guess is his castle, where he has like
Hmm.
all the Frankenstein stuff. And he's keeping the Butcher of Hyde Street in a cell there.
Hmm.
And apparently, like that's well, I mean, what's your take on that?
So the Butcher of Hyde's now, okay, remind me here, Nick. Have we seen the Butcher of Hyde Street before?
We have only seen the Butcher of Hyde Street's name on a scoreboard.
Okay,
We
so
saw
we've never seen this person before.
when we've never seen the character. Small detail when Oscar came through the scorekeeper at first, right before he got his eyes knocked out, the score
Uh-huh.
the Butcher had was 2.
Yes.
Now, years later, we don't know exactly how many years later. I don't think. Now, well, I guess this could be current day, so the many decades later, he's
Hmm.
got the Butcher of Hyde Street locked in a cell inside of the dungeon in his evil laboratory castle thing, and the Butcher of Hyde Street score is 9. So
Yes.
presumably between the Butcher got 7, and then for whatever reason somehow the Matinee Monster trapped him and stopped him.
Right. Okay. See, I wanted to make sure because I mean you're Mr. Ghost Machine, so I wanted to make sure that that I hadn't missed this, that we hadn't seen the Butcher of Hyde Street before. I'm really curious to see what this character looks like and is like because the Butcher of Hyde Street could mean any number of things. This could be, I mean, who knows what's behind that door? And that's a great horror effect and a great horror question to ask. And of course, again, we're left with more questions than answers. Why is he in there? What did he do? Why don't these two like each other? And how did his score tick up the way it did in the intermediary time frame? So yeah, more questions than answers. And again, the cast of Hyde Street keeps expanding, and I can't complain about that. And it's great that Jeff Johns has been able to do that from a writing standpoint while maintaining the momentum of what I think is supposed to be the central story between Mr. X-Ray and Pranky, the evil Boy Scout.
And because you know that he's actually been actively saving people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that he goes and sits in a castle and he's got a guy trapped there and we're like, why? He actively goes out and saves people, and it appears as though he makes them realize what they did wrong, and then they atone for that in the moment, and then they get to go somewhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's just an interesting dynamic because it's like, why is he allowed to continue to exist in that manner? The scorekeeper's power must be limited. He must need people to do these things for him. He must need to operate in this way. I'm not worried about trying to find out how the mechanics of that work necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it, so I want to see that story evolve. It doesn't mean that I necessarily want like the midichlorians or anything per se, because you're a Star Wars guy,
Well,
so you'll get that. I don't
you
necessarily
had to
need
go with
like
the midi chlorians reference.
I'm just saying like I don't need
No,
to I
I
don't
get
need
it.
to
I
know
get it.
exactly what's going on, but I would like to see more of what I am getting now because I think it's sweet. So,
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is that I get the sense that Jeff Johns knows what's going on.
oh, absolutely.
And what he chooses to show us is what's important. And how he keeps us enthralled with Hyde Street is what's important. So yeah, I mean, I'm very anxious to see more of the Matinee Monster. And again, I'm very curious to see what the Butcher is like and what he looks like and who he is.
So we have seen some art that Ivan has put out there. One's like a big demon looking dude, and another is like a more effeminate, scary horror looking character. And
Okay.
we've even put him in some of our videos on Instagram a while back when he did that. But I don't think the characters have been seen a ton since then. But I think one of them may have been the Butcher of Hyde Street. It may have been the dude with the horns, but I'm not sure. I could be making all that up, but they were
Okay.
cool, and those characters haven't like appeared and spoken as
Right.
far. I know, but so it could be something like that. Um,
Okay, okay.
and in the bio for the Matinee Monster that's contained at the end of this issue, it does specifically state that the Butcher of Hyde Street is his nemesis or adversary or something like that. So like it's very specific. His greatest adversary remains the mysterious resident he keeps imprisoned, known only as the Butcher of Hyde Street, is what it says.
So why are
That's
they
it.
rivals? What happened?
I don't
That's what I
know,
want.
but he's a good guy amidst all this stuff. To me, that means that one day he'll do something redeeming and be not like this horrible thing that he is right now. Like
This
somehow he'll be
monster.
redeemed. Yeah, like maybe he does enough of what he does, and he somehow that happens to him in the same way instead of whatever the scorekeeper is very obviously evil and wants something to be done there.
And
But
that's Mr. X-Ray's motivation too, or at least a large part of it, isn't it?
what to get more people?
To be redeemed.
Yeah, and it seems like for sure, he doesn't
So
ever
he
want
wants
to talk about his daughter, but we know that he definitely seems like he wants to get back with her one way or another. That's the vibe.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, he wants to be with his daughter.
Yeah. And the little teaser is at the next issue, which is also out on the stands right now for number 5, is going to be all about Miss Goodbody, all by Francis Portela. That looks like Ivan is going to be off for that issue.
Yes.
And although he did a pretty sweet cover, and Francis was a reminder of the guy that did the second printing cover of this issue that we're talking about right now, the one that we raved about. So hey, yeah, check
Hmm.
out that for the next issue for sure. Enjoyed this issue of Hyde Street, and it's a late night, but we still have one more section remaining, sir. If you're down for it, we have a listener
I'm
mail.
always down.
All right, so we do have a listener mail, and just so, as a reminder, Ghost Machine fans, we would love to hear from you. If you want to shoot us a message, a question, a heckle, we want your feedback no matter what. You can email us at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com, and you will be featured on the show. So this one comes from Supersonic Turtle. And they say, "Hi, Nick and Becky. Thank you for doing your show. I have been getting deeply into Ghost Machine since the trades have been coming out." That makes sense. There's been a lot of those. "Can you tell me if there is somewhere to find a checklist or reading order for the books?" As you can imagine, I may know the answer to this question, but for you, Rob, I'm just curious. When you get into something new, like a new IP in the comic book world, or even if it's just like an IP you're used to, but a new character, like a series you didn't read before,
Hmm.
are you someone that goes back and finds the Reddit with the reading order and takes a look at the thing because you're going to do it all and you're a completionist, or how do you do it?
Well, first of all, I'm scared to death of Reddit. Should I be scared of Reddit, or should I be friendly with Reddit?
Well, there's a Ghost Machine fans Reddit that
Is there?
I'm a moderator on it, but I shouldn't say
Okay.
it's not Ghost Machine. It's for Ghost Machine fans. It's not like our thing. I'm just a moderator. But Flashy Transition is the head of that one. Is the username for that gentleman. He's pretty awesome, and he's been running it. They have exceeded 500 members recently. Reddit's pretty neat for it's a different like delivery system, so it's a little bit more like people will post their thoughts about a book and respond and kind of chit chat a little bit, but it's more simplistic. And if you're going to search for something on Google, for some reason, it will pull those search results off of Reddit more
Okay.
readily.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know why, but
If you vouch for Reddit, Nick, I will give it a shot. But I used to be much more of a chronologist as far as DC comics are concerned. Like I would, there's a Batman, for instance, was one of my big ones, and there have been a million artists and writers to tackle Batman over the course of his history, and everybody's got a different take on his backstory and how this happened and when this happened. But, I was obsessed with figuring out, does this story follow that story? Or, how does year one relate to this story? Or does the Long Halloween take place after that? Or how does this all fit together? And, of course,
Mm.
Batman is an extravagant example. But yeah, I mean, I used to be much more, I don't know if completionist is the word, but I was much more fixated on the timeline of everything and what stories take place after other stories, et cetera, et cetera. As I've gotten older, I'm really just concerned more about, are we getting a good story? Not so much with the chronology of everything and how it works logistically. I can sympathize with that approach, but it's not so much who I am right now. As far as Ghost Machine is concerned, I think one of the great things about this line of books so far is that they are all more or less self contained. We know that certain
Hmm.
ones are in the same universe, but like you don't have to. The Rockefellers hasn't crossed over with Hornsby and Halo, or the Geiger hasn't crossed over with Redcoat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not in the traditional sense for sure. Like there hasn't been
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a
there are.
part two of seven, like chromium covers with holograms. Let's do this. Like that hasn't happened. But fingers
Yeah, I
crossed.
mean, there's no, so they're all pretty self-contained. So what I mean by that is, you can enjoy at this early stage in Ghost Machine's existence, you can enjoy the entirety of Geiger without having to worry about what's going on in Redcoat and vice versa. You know what I mean? So if I were this person, I would focus more or less on just enjoying the books as they are. And then later on, if crossovers do happen, that's kind of where you cross that bridge. Does that make sense?
For sure. And if you're just getting into it, really the reading order thing, if you're wanting to do that for the sake of story chronology, you only need to worry about the unnamed because
Mm.
everything else is like 6 issues or less and it's its own thing anyway, and you can kind of tell that. And so the unnamed is just Geiger, Junkyard Joe, which was a 6 issue series and it is not ongoing, but he's a character who's currently in the current series, and you should read that. And Redcoat in this, they haven't crossed over in that sense, but they have both appeared in each other's books. And then first Ghost that's upcoming and the Northerner stuff they're saying is kind of going to create the probably the first crossover is well, maybe that's me a, a bit of conjecture, but I think it's correct. So we'll see. But the thing is, if you want a reading order just for that, it's not. I get it. Like I kind of get it. That's where I would go into it because I would be like, all right, I want to go buy all the issues and read them because this has only been out for like 5 years or 4 years,
Hmm.
and that means I can easily catch up and I can jump on this train, man. Because like it's still early enough to where you can really start a great collection for one, get caught up as a reader, and know where the plot is for two. And it's not really happening anywhere else. Like the other stuff is cool. Like I love Spawn, I love Energon, but like especially the unnamed, this little shared about to be time spanning universe as soon as the Northerner comes into play is super fun, super collectible, super amazing creators that are doing it too. So it's just I get if you want to do the reading order for that, but
Yeah.
it's not a lot. It's like basically like, oh, I didn't know about those 2 issues from this weird Geiger side story series, and whoa, how many and because you don't like a lot of people don't even realize like you'll look at a Geiger 2 and a Geiger 2 and not realize there's actually three different
Yeah.
Geiger 2s from three different Geiger series, and it's just one of those things where it's people will get it over time, but if you're picking up the trades like Supersonic Turtle, then it's easier because that
Mhm.
is put together in a package. Like you can get Geiger Volume 1, Geiger Volume 2, Redcoat Volume 1 just came out recently, Rook Volume 1 just came out recently. That's not part of the unnamed, but still it's easy. And
Yeah.
if you're into that vibe, then you can do that. Now, the checklist thing, I'm an old school Valiant Comics fan, and ghostfans.com was famous for having a checklist because the old classic Valiant stories were ultimately self-contained because the company went under and then got bought by Acclaim to make video game comics, and it was a different thing. And so you could truly have a self-contained checklist, right? So people always kind of like want that. And so instead with Ghost Machine, the problem is it's forever growing, and like our wiki is part of that. But if you want to find one, there is something like that started on the Facebook. You can check that. Or the wiki is like an ongoing one. You just need to contribute and help us with it. But there is actually a really neat reading order thing that is like pinned to the top or whatever as one of the tools on the Ghost Machine Comics Reddit that is a reading order thing. And it has like links and stuff. Flashy Transition made it. That's the person's name who runs the Reddit. And it has all this stuff. So it's super cool. So if you want that, go there. That's a great place to see that. So
the Ghost Machine fans Reddit.
The Ghost Machine Comics Reddit.
The Ghost Machine Comics Reddit.
Yes, and then we're on there as Ghost Machine fans. We're one of the moderators.
Got it.
Yes, along with Nick Churton, who does all that Fan Friday stuff. He's out there in New Zealand, and that other person I mentioned a minute ago. But speaking of which, we're on the tail end of the episode. We've covered a lot of ground today, sir.
Most certainly.
So tell everybody where to find you out on the interwebs.
Well, first of all, Nick, thank you so much for having me back. I always have a great time with you on these episodes. You can find me at Comic Book Chronicles on TikTok or at Comic Book Chronicles Rob on Instagram and or YouTube. Those are the main ones.
It's a pleasure having you back, Rob. Thank you so much. I'm going to definitely keep checking out those sweet 2-minute comic review videos. And if you want to check out all of our content, you can do that by going to www.ghostmachinefans.com. There is a Twitter and a Blue Sky, both run by Cameron Gill out there in the UK. Thanks again for always beating that drum. And we're most active on the Instagram, but make sure to check out the Reddit that I mentioned too. Our friends on the Ghost Machine Comics Facebook fan page are awesome. They just hit 1,500 members. Shout out to them. Woo, great job, everybody. And we have a wiki on our webpage too that we're really looking for contributors for. And thanks for hanging out with us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.